Hi, my name is Kate Mullis and I'm the Education and Project Coordinator at the Association of Reflexologists. We have been approached by one of our members who is also a member of your long COVID group and asked if we would put together a presentation on some self-help reflexology techniques, and we are delighted to be able to do that for you. The presentation is available as a PDF file, so you can download and refer to that. The idea of reflexology is a complementary therapy. It's not an alternative therapy, so it doesn't replace the need for any medical advice that you've been given to follow. So I hope you find some of the techniques useful. I will explain them as we go along, and then I'll actually demonstrate them at the end of the video. So I'll just share my screen with you now. Just put myself down in the corner. Okay, so these are some suggested techniques for general well-being for symptoms of long COVID. Now, we know that the symptoms of long COVID are extremely varied, and we're just going to have a look at that in the presentation. Oops. So the first thing, what is reflexology? So we'll just start off by just explaining what reflexology is, just in case some of you are not familiar with what reflexology is about. It is a non-invasive complementary therapy. It's quite easy to do as a practitioner. There's no need to remove any clothing. It's quite versatile. You can do it in a number of settings, people's homes, clinics. It's quite easy. You don't need to have a lot of equipment to do it either. It's based on the theory that there are different points on the feet, lower leg, the hands, the face, or even the ears that correspond with different areas of the body, and reflexologists work these points and areas. So it's a bit like a holographic principle that there is a whole body imposed on other areas of the body. It's effective in promoting deep relaxation and well-being, by reducing stress, which can play a huge role in disrupting your general health. So relaxation helps to optimize good health and also helps you to build resilience. It provides a period of time for relaxation where the client has one-to-one attention and supportive touch in an empathetic listening environment. So that time that you are with your therapist is you time. The therapist is there to support you, to listen to you, empathetic listening, not sympathetic listening, walking in your shoes, being with you wherever you are on your health journey. Reflexology can be used alongside standard medical care. So as I've said, it's a complementary therapy, not an alternative therapy. The main theory behind reflexology. So the main theory is that all the systems, I think I mentioned this already, but all the systems and organs in the body are mirrored or reflected in smaller peripheral areas. So for example, the hands, the feet, the ears, the face. So you have this idea of the whole being present in the part, if that makes sense. Today we're going to look at the hands. We're going to look at the hands as our to use for working the whole body system. How reflexologists work, we basically work on these reflected areas with quite sensitive fingers. So when we have various techniques that we use, and we use a sort of technique for walking through the tissue, which enables us to pick up where that tissue has changed. So what reflexology tells us really is there is an area that's out of balance, and we relate that back to what that represents on the body. But it doesn't tell us what that actually means. It just means that something is out of balance. So we couldn't make a diagnosis, and we never make a diagnosis anyway, but we would be aware that the client had an issue in a particular area. Reflexology works very much on an individual basis. The reflexologist provides professional facilitation of your body's own potential for well-being, and that's a really critical thing to remember. Reflexologists have a skill where they are able to detect changes in tissue and work on those tissue changes, but they don't cause the healing. It's the person themselves. We are the facilitators, giving that person the space to allow their own body to do their own healing. So it's the individual that does their own healing. While there are few available scientific studies specifically into how reflexology works, there are scientific studies that support the potential positive effects that can be achieved by touch. Lots of small scale research projects. The problem is with reflexology is there isn't the money to do lots and lots of research. I think the way forward is to do lots of smaller pieces that we gradually put together, and that builds up a picture of how reflexology is exerting its effect. So how can reflexology help you? Reflexology is a therapy which can be received by anyone at any age. So you can have babies having reflexology, right up to seniors, elderly clients receiving reflexology. So there's no age limit to reflexology, which is, you know, a great thing about the therapy. When you go for a treatment, it's very much individualized to your particular needs. So when you would if you were to see a therapist, they would very much take account of you as a person, your physical, non-physical factors that might be influencing your well-being. So the reflexologist would tailor the treatment based on the consultation. The theory is that reflexology helps to restore the body balance, you know, get back to its natural balance. Usually after a treatment, clients find that they have reduced tension. Certainly, I would say that there is a feeling of relaxation. Over time, clients might notice that they have better sleeping patterns, that their mood improves, and that their overall sense of well-being improves. There may also be an improvement in other aspects. So once you start to improve in one area, the idea is that this will have a knock-on effect, so that overall there is an improvement in health and well-being. But it's very much an individual, it works on a very individual basis. It depends where you are with your starting point as to how much individual healing you need to do yourself. Been some positive research projects, I think we've mentioned that, carried out with reflexology, but there's not enough, not a large enough body of evidence to make us allow us to make clinical claims of the effectiveness of reflexology. And then just to reiterate, reflexologists don't claim to cure, diagnose, or prescribe. So it's a complementary therapy. We never make diagnosis on clients, which is why we always do a consultation. We need to have that information from the client to understand what we might feel. And then when we've done our reflexology, it often confirms what we can feel in the feet or the hand or the face. So just bring it back to COVID then. We know at the moment there are lots and lots of problems with people who have had COVID and the symptoms they are experiencing afterwards. So I've just done a quick look through, and this has thrown me up a huge list anyway, and I'm sure it's possibly not the end of the list because we're still, you know, working our way through this pandemic. So lots of the common symptoms that have cropped up so far is lasting breathing problems and chest pain. This thing of skin issues, skin changes, lots of skin pictures where clients have had different types of skin issues. This purpleness of the toes, this COVID toe. Reflexologists have certainly noticed this with clients when they've been allowed to practice. Muscle aches, body aches, insomnia, issues with heart rate rhythm, so arrhythmias, so erratic heartbeat, or a faster than normal heartbeat, which is diagnosed as something called tachycardia. Feelings of exhaustion, just having no energy whatsoever, quite commonly reported. Gastrointestinal distress, vomiting, diarrhea, high temperature, chills. Some clients have reported hair loss. Also cognitive problems, memory loss, brain fog, confusion. I saw today just reading something about quite a few clients, also depression, you know, not feeling like they were before they were ill. Hallucinations, disorientation, and panic attacks also reported. So there is a whole range of problems. I mean, not every client will have every problem, and there will certainly be some that are more noticeable with some clients and you know, with some individuals than others. So what we're going to do with the techniques is just try and make some suggestions for some areas that you might want to work depending on what sort of symptoms you've got. Okay, so working on the hands, some suggested points for improvement for well-being. Okay, so before we do any handwork, what we would normally do is actually warm the hands up. So we've got some techniques. I'm going to demonstrate these later. And like I say, you've got the handout so you can download this and perhaps follow along when I'm doing I'm going to enlarge the screen and then you can watch them in a bit more detail. So we've got some warm-up techniques just to loosen up the hands, get the blood flow through the hands, lubricate the joints a bit before we actually start working on them with our technique. So we've got some nice stretches, rotations, just get the whole wrist joints, finger joints lubricated before we start working them. And then here's some of our reflex areas. So I've picked some of them, which I think are more relevant to some of the symptoms that you might have. Now, obviously, when you're working, you're not going to do every single one of these. I think there's about 12 in total, but you won't be working every single reflex area. So we'll talk about working how you would want to work them at the end. So the first one I've chosen is the head reflex. So obviously, the head's really important, lots of structures in the head. Represented on the tip of the thumb. I've also included the brain reflex, again, brain complex area. We've got a particular way of working that reflex as well. The pituitary, incredibly important in reflexology. The pituitary is like the master gland. It controls secretions that influence all the endocrine glands. So that's a good one to be working. And then we've got some more associated with physical stress and tension. So we've got the neckline here represented. And if we just go forward, again, more to do with like aches and pains in muscles and joints. We've got the shoulder reflex I've picked out. The adrenal, often if you're exhausted, there is issues with adrenal. So the adrenal gland located on the hand. The diaphragm, great diaphragm, great to use the diaphragm. The diaphragm is associated with not just breathing, but everything that's going on the abdominal cavity. It influences the lower abdominal cavity as well through its muscular contraction and relaxation. And also this thing of having a deep breath and inhaling, oxygenating properly. So the diaphragm's a good one. I've also mentioned solar plexus, which unfortunately isn't shown on the chart, but I will put that in. And then we've also got the spine reflex. So the spine on the hand, when it's reflected on the hand, is actually quite different to when it's on the foot. You have quite a long cervical and thoracic spine and quite a condensed lumbar spine, but we will look at that one. Then I have the heart reflex and the lungs. So this chest area is really good one to work. If you feel like the breath, you're not catching your breath, or the breath is not as deep and as full as it should be, there's some lovely techniques to work between the metacarpal joints for just loosening up that chest area, and it also incorporates the lymph as well. And then for gastrointestinal disorders, I've also included the small intestine, which is located more in the lower portion of the palm of the hand, and the large intestine as well. Bit tricky, that one, because of the way that we view the hands. We tend to, when we're working them, they tend to be a bit of a mirror image, but we'll look at that one later. So here's a suggestion of reflexes that you could work. So I'm going to run through them one by one and actually demonstrate them so you can see in a bit more detail. Like I said, you probably wouldn't use every single technique on all the every single reflex, but pick out the ones that you think are more relevant to you. And I'll just say a little bit about the Association of Reflexologists as well. We do have some interactive hand and foot charts which are available if you follow the links before. And if you're in the UK and looking for a reflexologist when we can return to work, please check out our website, because all the therapists listed on our Find a Reflexologist search are highly qualified therapists that have reached a particular educational standard with their reflexology, and they're professional therapists insured to work with clients. So that's all in the presentation. Like I say, you can download that and have a look at it. I'm now going to increase the stop sharing and open up the screen so I can demonstrate the techniques. Okay, so I've got my list of techniques here. Now, it might help if you use a little bit of cream on the hands if your hands are quite dry. So you just might need a little bit of lubrication on the hands. It certainly helps. You know, if your hands and the skin are a bit dry. Warming up the hands. So this is the first one. So just get my instructions. Warming the hands. So the first one we've got is hand washing. So we should all be experts at hand washing. We don't need to hum happy birthday while we're doing it, but literally just if you put a bit of medium on, it will just help you spread the medium round. Just that sort of rotation, you know, working the hands, getting used to how the hands feel a little bit in some respect. So this hand washing movement. The second one is rotating the wrists. So rotating the wrists sort of in a clockwise direction. So just rotating around, and then anti-clockwise. So just moving the carpal joints, the bones, quite a few bones in the wrist. So just loosening those up before we start working. So clockwise, anti-clockwise, rather than rotating in the same. If you don't think about it, it's sort of easier to let them do their own thing. Hand stretches. So for this one, we're going to interlink the fingers and then push sort of forwards and backwards. So again, you're just lubricating the joints in the wrist area. So you've got this flexion, extension going on at the wrist. And then massaging the fingers and the joints. So we're just going to use the fingers of one hand to massage the finger of the other. So working your way all the way up. When you get to the joints, you can just pay a little bit more attention if you feel they're a little bit crunchy or they just feel a little bit stiff. Oops, wrong way. So work your way up the fingers. And I'm also going to do the thumb as well. So I'm going to do my thumb joint, just massaging. Really get the blood flowing in these little capillaries in the digits. Right, start with my little finger. Sorry, it's a bit difficult watching. Right. So massaging. I mean, you might find when you're actually doing this that you do have some tender, you know, you come across some tender areas. So just make a sort of mental note of where those are. Do my index finger and then my thumb. So in the instructions, it says you can support either side of the joint with the thumb and the finger, and then actually just rock the joint slightly. If you find you've got, you know, when you come across a joint in the finger that just feels a little bit stiff, just to get a bit of movement into it, just lubricate that joint and move it around a little bit. And then the last one is to pull each finger gently, just to release the tension. So I'm just going to pull. So slide up the fingers. You've got a slight bit of traction as you're pulling. So there's a little bit of traction. So you don't want too much cream on because otherwise it will just slide completely off. But you want enough to be able to travel over the skin without pulling it, you know, without really pulling the skin too much. Right. And then the last one is to massage into the palms of the hand. So using the thumb and massage into the palm. Now this feels really nice if you're, you know, you're not used to sort of stretching the palm out. It just feels really nice over this, this thenar eminence. It just really, you know, you might find that you've got quite tight palms. Just swap hands, massage into that palm. So it's really nice. You can feel all the metacarpal joints. and then this muscular thenar eminence. Okay, so by the end of it, the fingers should be, the blood flow in the fingers should be quite good. Your wrists should feel quite loose. Your hands are ready to do the reflexology now. Right, so I'm going to run through all the reflex areas in the order on the sheet. It may be that some of them are not relevant to you in terms of the symptoms that you've got. Like I say, you wouldn't use all of them, so I'm going to run through them. But if there's any areas that you work where you feel it's tender, then I would certainly rework those areas. Any areas where you have tenderness, from a reflexology point of view, would sort of suggest congestion of some sort. So even if you're working the head but you don't have any symptoms in the head, if you were to find that this was tender, I would definitely include it as one of the reflex areas. So the head reflex, how do we find that? So we are looking at the thumbs, and then if we bend the thumb, the area that we're going to work is from the bend upwards. So this is the head reflex. And the way reflexologists work is they use a type of what we call caterpillar walking. So we normally use our thumbs and do this caterpillar walking. So it's a sort of pressure on, pressure off, and then we sort of creep forward as we're doing it. So we use our thumbs and we also use our fingers to do this type of movement. It's not easy to do. It looks easy, but when you actually come to do it, it's sometimes it's not as easy as it looks. So you can use the finger just like an up down type of movement. So if you look at the diagram, we're going to work down the head area, taking these little steps down to the crease of the thumb until we've covered the whole of the thumb area, the top of the thumb. Now, if it doesn't feel comfortable, what you can do is just slide. So use the finger just to slide down through the reflexes, through that reflex area. So just using the finger, which is why if you've got some lubrication, you'll find it a bit easier to do. So just slide down. So I'm going to do it on the thumb. So there's the bend. So this one, I'm going to, again, walk through this one. So I just won't do my little finger walking down to the crease. So when you're working, you might find one's tender and one's not. One side is a bit tender and one's not. I just do the sliding through. So you can see immediately it's brought some blood into the area. So just sliding through. So this is the whole of the head. So you think what structures are in the head. There's lots going on in the head. So if you've got sort of fuzzy, that sort of fuzziness, you've got congestion in the head, in the nasal passages, things like that, that would be a good one to work. The brain reflex. So the brain reflex is actually located at the tip of the thumb. And how we work this one is we're going to use the knuckle, because it's quite difficult. You can press, but we're going to use the knuckle to exert a bit of pressure. So again, tip of the thumb, knuckle, and then I just do like a little circular movement on the top. So supporting my thumb underneath, little circular movement for the brain. Swap. So I'm going to use this knuckle and circling on the brain reflex. So it's right on the tip of the thumb. The next one, which is quite a useful one, is the pituitary. So pituitary sort of sends out messengers to lots of endocrine glands. So it's one that we would often notice on people's feet, certainly where you've got, whether someone is out of balance, really noticeable in stress, hormone disorders. You can often see the pituitary reflex area just sort of almost waving out at you. So the pituitary is located again in the thumb, and it's normally across the widest part of the thumb. Sometimes if you look at your fingerprint, where you've got this sort of central whirl of your fingerprint, that represents the pituitary. I can actually see mine quite clearly there. I'm obviously having a little bit of a stressful time, but you can actually see that pituitary reflex there. Not so notice, I can see it on that one as well. So again, to work the pituitary, I take my knuckle and I knuckle into this pituitary reflex and just see what that feels like. You might notice when you work it that you sort of come on and off it, so that you pass over a painful spot and then it disappears. So the bit where the painful spot is probably the pituitary. Just do it on that hand as well. So as you pass on and off it, it'll be like painful, not painful. So then you know that you've caught that bit of pituitary gland. So that's the pituitary. So tips of thumbs, the widest part probably, look for the little whirl in the fingerprint, and that's the pituitary gland. And then the next one we've got is the neckline. So the neckline, we work for releasing tension. So again, if you bend the thumb, this neckline is now on the diagram, it's at the base of the thumb here, but actually this whole area here represents the sort of neck and the throat as well. So if I was going to work this, I could work across with my little thumb walking. So I'm actually going to come a bit lower. So I'm actually coming a bit lower down, or take my two fingers and slide across. So slide across the base of that thumb. And you can travel quite sort of the way round, because think of what the neck is like, one side to the other. So I'm going to do it on this side. Excuse me, do it on this side. So neck reflex. Sometimes here, this bit here is sort of like the occiput as well, the top of the neck. So you might find this is a little bit, can be a little bit tender as well. Neck. Right, the next one, the shoulder. So the shoulder reflex is located at the base of the fifth finger. So if you come down where the finger attaches to the hand, this area here, that represents the shoulder. Now you can work the shoulder on the palm of the hand and also on what we call the dorsal surface of the hand. So I'm going to take my thumb and my finger as if I was pinching it together and work them both at the same time. So I can either do my thumb walking, if you're not sort of au fait with that, then you can just slide up. So slide up this reflex area. So it's quite large. It's sort of this sort of area here. And again, you might find that you've got some bits that are not tender, and then suddenly you might find a little part in that that is, you know, exquisitely tender. So sliding the thumb up. Or you could just like do some massage. So the dorsal and the plantar, so the front and the back of the shoulder, are getting worked at the same time. So shoulder reflex, you know, if you found you've been sort of coughing and the back is sore and the shoulders, like where the trapezius comes out, you know, you might sort of notice that that feels a bit tight. Adrenal gland, again, another great reflex to use. You know, if you have been unwell and you're struggling, you've got low energy, the adrenal gland is another good one. I mean, use it a lot as reflexologists, you know, look at people's adrenals. So the adrenal gland, you want to get the palm, again, do this little pincher movement, but you're going to pinch into the fleshy part between the thumb and the first digit. So just in this squidgy bit here. And just pinch and just see what that feels like. Now, if you're a bit depleted and you are, you know, exhausted from, you know, using your adrenals to sort of, you know, you're feeding off your adrenals, that might be quite sore. So I've just noticed I'm just going to move that out of the way. So again, in the fleshy part of the thumb and fleshy part of the palm, just squeeze together. So you're squeezing. If you want, if you find, you can actually rotate on it as well. So if you find it's probably a bit lumpy, you can just do some rotations on that as well. Diaphragm, right. I think this is a great one for if you've been coughing, if the lung doesn't feel like it's sort of you're inhaling properly, or you just don't feel like your chest is really opening up enough when you, are taking an inspiration. So the diaphragm on the hands runs across from, if you look at the below the shoulder line, and then across the palm of the hand. Now, on some charts, it actually goes from here across here, but the key thing is it's sort of crossing the palm of the hand. So to work this one, I'm going to take my thumb, and again, I'm just going to use my thumb walking, sorry, finger walking, or if not, I can just slide across. And this is certainly a reflex where you may have some tender spots, not necessarily all along the diaphragm, but in parts of it. So as you're passing through the tissue of your palm, you might certainly find that you've got some areas that are quite tender. It's a bit difficult to do. So the solar plexus point that I was mentioning at the start of the presentation, the solar plexus point is in the center of the palm. So it sits just below the diaphragm line. And if you take the thumb and just rotate, this again might be quite tender. So it's a nerve plexus. And then the way that we would work this as therapists is to actually press on the solar plexus point and get the client to take a deep breath in. And then as they exhale, we take the pressure out. So on inspiration, press in, and then the expiration, release the pressure. It's a good one for really centering yourself. If you are, you could almost start like a sequence. If you're going to do sort of 5 minutes of hand reflexology, to actually start your treatment by pressing into the solar plexus and just, making your breath, more rhythmical, deeper. It sort of induces a better state of relaxation before you actually do some other of the reflex areas. So that's a useful one, the solar plexus. The spinal reflex, again, they're all useful. Another useful one now. The spine runs from, now you need to bend the thumb, runs from the outside of the thumb, round the edge of the palm, and then across the bottom of the palm here. So if we look at it on the foot, it looks slightly different. It's a much more elongated spine. On the hand, it's a lot more stubby, I think is the word I would describe. It's a slightly different shape. So to work it, let's see if I can do it this way around, because I'm normally be sort of working. Probably better if you actually start from the base. So this is the bottom part of the spine. So the coccyx, the sacrum, you've got the lumbar spine, my thoracic spine. So I'm coming up. So you should feel the bony edge. It's the bony edge that you're working on. And then I'm coming up into the cervical spine. And then that's as far as I need to go, just up to here, because this represents the head and the spine doesn't come up the top of the head. So from here, right the way down to here. They could slide all the way up. So I keep this bent so you can see where I'm going to finish. Try the other hand. So I'm going to slide. And again, as you're working through this area, you might find that you have got some areas that are much more tender than others. So slide up and then just stop at the cervical spine. You might want to go back, might have a few, and then just, if you find you've got an area, say this is down in the lumbar, you might want to just rotate. You can just rotate just to tease out any tenderness. Okay, next one. Next one is the heart. I put the heart on. So the heart is at the base of the thumb. And then how you would work this is just to sort of, so the thumb crease, the base of the thumb crease is just to pinch this one. So it's not in the same place as the adrenal. Adrenal is here, heart is here. So they're quite close, but they're not the same reflex. Just demonstrate it on that one. So again, just pinch at the crease at the base of the thumb. And again, you can just little rotation if you want to. The lungs. Okay, so the lung reflex is located in the top portion of the hand. Essentially, how the hand is laid out is this is all the sort of head, the head, then we have the sort of shoulder, the chest, upper digestive, lower digestive, and then we have the spine running down the center. So there is a logical way of actually relating the reflexes to the body. So head coming down through the thoracic cavity, upper digestive, lower digestive, and then it's basically right hand represents the organs in the right side of the body, and the left hand represents the organs in the left side of the body. So our lung reflex is a great way to work it, and we can actually work right the way across. But what's really effective is to work down between the metacarpal joints, and it's quite nice to work on the palmar surface and also the dorsal surface as well. So I'm just going to slide my fingers down between my metacarpal joints. So I turn my hand around, you can see that I'm working. Might feel like I need to just circle across the top. And again, you might find that you've got an area in this lung reflex area that's a bit more tender, or there's one bit that's certainly more noticeable than others. So I'm just going to work across. You might find this actually might be a bit tender. This is also quite lymphatic. You know, so if you've been unwell and you have you know, some residual infection that's not taking a bit of time to clear, this bit might be quite tender for you here between the metacarpal bones. This would be a good place to work. I'm just going to massage across there. So lungs, lung reflex. Now I put in some for the gastrointestinal tract, in particular the intestines and the large intestine. So this is our thoracic area. This lower part of the palm is the small intestine. So I'm just going to use my fingers. Actually, I might use 3 fingers to just walk all the way across the lower part of the palm. I'm going to slide this time. Swap hands. So this is all the small intestine reflex. So again, if you wanted to, you could explore it in a bit more detail. Use the fingers to explore the lower part of the palm. And then again, if you find any areas that are a bit tender, just rotate into them. And what you should find is that tenderness disappears, that tender area disappears. Might not initially, it might take a couple of, you know, a bit of time, a couple of times to work it, but the idea is that you have an area that you're working where you don't have these tender spots. And then the last one is the large intestine. Now, this is a bit of a tricky one because just the way that the colon, the large intestine, travels around on the how it's reflected in the hand. So when we would be looking at the hand to work it, it would come up the ascending colon. It would come across the transverse colon, carry on across the transverse colon, down the descending colon, and then come down to the sigmoid colon, and then the rectum, and then the anus. So it has a bit of a complicated shape if you're working it, because when you come to work it on your hand, you're obviously going to turn your hand up to face you, and so you've almost got like a bit of a mirror image. So I'm going to work it facing you, but when you actually come to work it yourself, you're going to actually flip that image over, if that makes sense. If it's just too confusing, what you can do is just when you're doing your small intestine, you can work your large intestine at the same time. Okay, so I'm going to come up my ascending colon. So I'm going to use this thumb sliding now up my ascending colon. And then I'm going to come across my transverse colon. So across the palm of the hand. And then I'm going to pick that transverse colon up on the other side. So the remainder of the transverse colon. And then I'm going to come down my descending colon. So down. And then the last part is the sigmoid colon, the rectum, and the anus. So again, if it's just a bit confusing, you can just use, this nice sort of like rotating way of working across the palm of the hand. And again, if you find any areas where they feel tender, you can, just focus in on those and work them. So I think that's all of the reflex areas covered. If you choose to work some, I would probably pick 2 or 3. And then what you want to do is work them for a maximum of about 4 or 5 minutes. So you're only going to spend a minute or so on each point, and do that a couple of times a day. So rather than do sort of 3 lots of 5 minutes, rather than 15 or 20 minutes all in one go, it's too much. It's better if you just focus a couple of times a day, pick the points that are definitely more relevant to you, and then work those. When you're working, I would also say, have some quiet time to do the work. Pick a time when you are, you've got a bit of time and a bit of space for yourself, because when you're working these reflexes, you could start with the solar plexus breathing, just to quieten your mind and just get ready for what you want to do is really have a sense of what's going on in the tissues when you're working. So rather than sat there watching telly, thinking about what you're going to have for tea tonight, have you got a big pile of ironing, did I leave the gas on? Actually, no, the last one you better go and check. But the thing is, the point is to really bring your mind to the focus, focus here on what you're feeling here, and have this space in which you can do only 5 minutes, but that 5 minutes is sort of quality, exploration of these reflex areas. And it might be that you sort of work some of them and they change, and then you can pick some different reflexes out of the sheet, and then work on those for 5 minutes each day. I think that's all I wanted to share with you. So I'm really hoping this is useful. The sheets are down, the file will be down there in a PDF format that you can use and follow along. It's really tricky. I say the COVID symptoms we're still finding out that there are lots and lots of symptoms from COVID. It's not just one thing, there's lots of symptoms that people are having. So I hope amongst the reflexes, the areas that I've picked out, they just can work alongside other things that you're doing to help you, with a speedy recover from any symptoms that you've had. So I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. Thank you for watching, and stay safe.